December 2001, New York City. Lawyers file bankruptcy papers for a company called Enron. 2 years earlier, its stock traded above $90 a share. That morning, it was worth less than $1. Enron had not always looked like a house of cards. It was formed in 1985 when a company called Houston Natural Gas merged with another interstate pipeline company, Internorth, under a chief executive named Kenneth Lay. For its first years, Enron was simply a gas pipeline operator, carrying fuel across the country, saddled with heavy debt and a dull reputation. Lay wanted more. Through the 1990s, Enron reinvented itself as a trading company, buying and selling energy contracts the way a bank trades currencies, and eventually moving into trading almost anything with a price attached, from broadband internet capacity to weather derivatives. The company moved into a 50-story glass tower in downtown Houston, and its trading floor became known for a culture of aggressive risk-taking, where young traders could earn enormous bonuses for booking deals, whether or not those deals ever generated real cash. 2 decisions from that era made the later collapse possible. In 1992, regulators approved Enron's request to use an accounting method called mark-to-market, which let the company book the entire projected future profit of a long-term contract the moment it was signed, regardless of whether that money would ever actually arrive. A power plant in India, in the town of Dabhol, became one of the clearest examples. Enron booked huge profits on the project for years, while it struggled and ultimately failed to deliver anywhere near the cash those profits implied. And in 1990, Lay hired a young consultant named Jeffrey Skilling, who pushed the company toward ever more aggressive trading and built an internal culture that ranked employees against each other twice a year, firing the bottom 15% regardless of performance. Employees called it rank and yank. Skilling became Enron's president, then briefly its chief executive. Wall Street loved this story for years. Fortune magazine named Enron America's most innovative company 6 years running. At its peak, the stock traded above $90 a share, and Enron ranked among the largest companies in the country by reported revenue. By early 2001, a handful of skeptics started asking questions nobody at Enron could clearly answer. A hedge fund manager named Jim Chanos, who specialized in betting against overvalued companies, began digging into Enron's financial filings and found the numbers strangely opaque for a company of its size. That March, a Fortune magazine writer named Bethany McLean published an article simply titled, "Is Enron Overpriced?" pointing out that nobody she spoke to, including Wall Street analysts who rated the stock a buy, could explain exactly how Enron made its money. Skilling, on an earnings call not long after, responded to a persistent analyst's question about the company's financial statements by calling him an expletive live on the call, a moment that would later be replayed constantly once the truth came out. Underneath the growth, the numbers were increasingly fiction. Mark-to-market accounting let Enron report profits on deals that were losing money in reality, as long as the paperwork claimed they would pay off eventually. To keep the illusion going, and to hide mounting debt from investors and credit rating agencies, Chief Financial Officer Andrew Fastow built a network of off-balance sheet partnerships with names like Chewco, LJM, and the Raptors, the last of these named after the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. These entities bought Enron's troubled assets and absorbed its losses, keeping them off Enron's own books. Fastow personally ran several of these partnerships while still serving as Enron's CFO, and pocketed tens of millions of dollars in fees along the way. A conflict of interest the board approved anyway, waiving its own code of ethics to let him do it. Enron's trading arm also found other ways to make money. During California's energy crisis in 2000 and 2001, Enron traders used strategies with names like Death Star and Fat Boy to exploit the state's newly deregulated power grid, deliberately creating artificial congestion and shortages that drove up prices and triggered rolling blackouts across the state. Millions of Californians lost power for hours at a time, and the state's governor, Gray Davis, publicly accused energy traders of manipulating the market long before anyone could prove it. Recordings of Enron traders joking about the crisis, and about squeezing money from what they called Grandma Millie, later surfaced in the criminal investigations that followed. By August 2001, Skilling had been chief executive for only 6 months. He abruptly resigned, citing personal reasons, and Kenneth Lay stepped back into the role, telling employees and analysts that Enron had never been in better shape. Days later, a company vice president named Sharon Watkins sent Lay an anonymous-turned-signed memo warning that Enron could, in her words, implode in a wave of accounting scandals. She specifically flagged the Fastow partnerships as a ticking time bomb. Lay had the memo reviewed by outside lawyers with ties to the very partnerships in question, who found nothing requiring immediate disclosure, and the company kept moving forward in public as though nothing was wrong. The cracks became impossible to hide in October 2001. Enron reported a third-quarter loss of $618 million and disclosed a $1.2 billion reduction in shareholder equity, tied directly to the Fastow partnership's unwinding. Analysts on the earnings call struggled to understand the charge, even as Lay described it as one-time and unusual. The Securities and Exchange Commission opened a formal investigation days later. Within weeks, Enron admitted it would need to restate 5 years of earnings, erasing nearly $600 million in previously reported profit, and adding more than $600 million in previously hidden debt back onto its balance sheet. Enron's stock, which had already been sliding for months, went into freefall, dropping from around $30 a share that summer to just a few dollars by late November. A rival energy company, Dynegy, agreed to acquire Enron in a deal meant to save it, then walked away after its own accountants looked closer at what they were buying and found the hole far deeper than disclosed. With no rescue left and credit rating agencies downgrading its debt to junk status within days, Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on December 2, 2001. At the time, the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history, listing more than $60 billion in assets. Roughly 20,000 employees around the world lost their jobs almost overnight. Many had also lost their retirement savings, which were heavily invested in Enron stock inside the company's 401k plan, a plan that had restricted employees from selling shares during the final weeks of the collapse, even as some executives sold their own holdings. Lay himself and several other executives were later found to have sold company stock worth tens of millions of dollars in the months before the bankruptcy, even while publicly telling employees the stock was a good buy. Congressional hearings followed within weeks. Both Lay and Skilling appeared before Congress. Lay declined to answer questions and later invoked his right against self-incrimination, while Skilling insisted under oath that Enron had been a fundamentally sound company, brought down by a crisis of confidence rather than fraud. Lawmakers on the committee, holding up copies of Enron's own organizational charts filled with partnership names like LJM2 and Raptor, asked how a board of directors could possibly have approved structures this convoluted without understanding what they hid. Enron's outside auditor, the accounting firm Arthur Andersen, had signed off on the company's books for years and had also earned tens of millions of dollars a year advising Enron on the very transactions it was supposed to be auditing independently. As federal investigators closed in during October and November of 2001, Andersen employees shredded documents related to the Enron audit, filling trash bags and running shredders late into the night. In 2002, a jury convicted the firm of obstruction of justice. Even though the Supreme Court later overturned that conviction on a technicality, the damage was already done. Clients had fled the moment the indictment was announced, and Andersen, once one of the 5 largest accounting firms in the world, with roughly 85,000 employees globally, effectively ceased to exist within months. Congress responded the following year with the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, the broadest overhaul of corporate accounting and disclosure rules since the Great Depression, requiring executives to personally certify their company's financial statements and creating a new oversight board to police auditors, a direct response to Andersen's failure to catch what its own partners should have seen. The criminal cases took years to reach trial. Andrew Fastow pleaded guilty in 2004 and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors, ultimately serving about 5 years in prison. His wife, Leah Fastow, a former Enron employee herself, pleaded guilty to a lesser tax charge tied to the same schemes, and served roughly a year. Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling were tried together in a Houston courtroom in 2006, in a trial that ran for nearly 4 months. Both men testified in their own defense, insisting the company's collapse was the result of a market panic and a few rogue employees, rather than deliberate fraud at the top. The jury did not agree with either man's account of events. Both were convicted on charges including fraud and conspiracy. Lay died of a heart attack that summer at his vacation home in Colorado before he was ever sentenced, and a court later vacated his conviction because he had died before completing the appeals process, a legal quirk that meant he was never, on paper, officially guilty of anything. Skilling was sentenced to 24 years in federal prison, at the time, one of the longest sentences ever handed to a corporate executive in America, later reduced on appeal to just over 14 years. Enron's headquarters tower in Houston, once topped with the company's tilted E logo, was sold off and renamed. The Enron name itself became newsroom shorthand for corporate fraud, invoked for 2 decades afterward, every time another company's accounting fell apart. He was released from federal prison in 2019 after serving 12 years.